Nine o'clock on this Friday night, February 17th, as we recap what happened in the courtroom today in the Alex-Murdaugh double murder trial. The disgraced attorney accused of shooting and killing his wife Maggie and son Paul in June of 2021. Now, after we go over what happened in the courtroom today, and there was a lot that happened, we're going to be joined by criminal defense attorney Taylor Bell for his take on the latest developments in this trial. All right, it was an eventful day in the courtroom now as prosecutors rested their case, but not until their final witness offered a very detailed timeline of the evening Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were killed. SLED Special Agent Peter Rudofsky has spent more than a year working on a timeline of events. He added more details after General Motors provided prosecutors with additional data from Murdaugh's Chevy Suburban. That new information shows locations, times, and speed of his vehicle on the night Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were murdered. It showed his car at his parents' house for about 20 minutes that night, but returning to his home by 10 o'clock.
It's going to be to Randy Murdaugh, John Marvin.
That starts at 9:06:12?
Yes, and it goes to 9:06:20.
The orientation starts to change. What happens 2 seconds after that orientation starts to change?
At 9:06:14, so that's 2 seconds afterwards, the phone receives an incoming call from Alex.
Was that call on the call log when Dylan Hightower downloaded the defendant's phone?
It was not.
New GPS data shows exactly where Murdaugh's vehicle and where it was and when it arrived at the dog kennels when Murdaugh said he discovered Maggie and Paul's bodies. Prosecutors compared the time of his arrival and what he told a 911 operator.
Next map's going to be 10:05:57. That's the arrival time at the kennels.
According to that GPS location data.
Yes, sir, from GM and OnStar.
What's that time again?
It's going to be 10:05:57.
Down at the bottom of the page, what time is the 911 call?
10:06:14.
How many seconds is that from the time that the Suburban arrives at the kennels and he calls 911?
Roughly 20 seconds.
What, if anything, in his statements to law enforcement did the defendant say about what he did when he arrived at the scene?
The defendant stated that he went and checked on Paul and Maggie to check the bodies.
And from the moment the Suburban arrived at the kennels, how long did it take for that 911 call to be made?
Less than 20 seconds.
Rudofsky gave details about when Murdaugh was driving between his property called Moselle and his parents' home on the night of the murders, and that he sped up after passing the area where Maggie Murdaugh's phone was later found.
In the grayish white looking box, you can still see the little circle where it says Maggie Murdaugh's phone location, and right under it's where the pinpoint's going to be. It's going to be 9:08:36, 42 miles an hour.
Next slide, 25. Slide 25.
The upper halfway portion of that box, you're going to see the circle again, the orange circle. That's going to be Maggie Murdaugh's phone. And at 9:08:42, we have the Suburban traveling approximately 45 miles an hour.
After passing that location, does the defendant's vehicle start to accelerate?
It does.
Again, this was the prosecution's final witness of the day. However, the day started with defense attorney Dick Harpootlian cross-examining SLED agent Ryan Kelly. Kelly had already testified about his investigation of the roadside shooting in September of 2021. While hospitalized after that incident, Murdaugh told Agent Kelly that he was shot by an unknown man while changing a tire. During a heated exchange in court today, Dick Harpootlian questioned Kelly's decision to interview Murdaugh while he was recovering from a head wound.
There was drug testing done on this day, correct?
Again, they did not discuss with me his medical records. Mr. Harpootlian, they didn't talk to me about his medical records.
And you didn't ask them, did you? Did you ask them?
The testing that was being
conducted. Did you ask them?
We did not ask to discuss specific aspects of Mr. Murdaugh's medical condition. We had to subpoena the records with a court order to have access to them.
Well, after the prosecution rested, the defense asked Judge Newman to issue a directed verdict. basically seeking a dismissal of the case based on the lack of physical evidence. While Judge Newman refused the request, there were some interesting moments during that exchange. For instance, defense attorney Jim Griffin admitted that the state had proven Murdaugh was at the dog kennels on the night of the murders.
His mere presence at the scene of a crime without more is insufficient to constitute guilt. The reason I say that legal doctrine, Your Honor, is at most what the state has proven and offered of proof is that the defendant was at the kennels at 8:44. He misstated that he was there, or he lied about he was being down there, and that raises a level of suspicion, and that they have concocted a cell phone timeline to come up with a time of death without any actual evidence of time of death.
These folks had been dead less than a couple hours?
1 to 3 hours typically is what they say that Riger should start developing.
Okay, and in terms of trying to estimate or get it a little bit closer than 1 to 3 hours, you took your hand. Show me what you did, and you did it both for Paul.
At the end of the day, the
Yes.
defense called its first witness of the trial. Colleton County Coroner Richard Harvey testified about the time of death for Maggie and Paul Murdaugh.
A couple hours?
1 to 3 hours typically is what they say that
On your death certificate, 9 o'clock.
that's strictly an estimation.
That's a guess.
It's a guess.
Okay, could have been 8:30,
Could have been 8:30.
could have been 10 o'clock.
There are no witnesses there to tell me exactly what time this happened.
All right, so again, the defense putting just a couple of witnesses on the stand late this afternoon from about 4:10 to about 4:40. The trial is in recess until Tuesday. That is because it's President's Day on Monday and there is no court. Taylor Bell, criminal defense attorney, is joining us now. We've got a lot to unpack right now.
We do. They're done. They're done.
The prosecution has rested its case, but today's witness, Rodofsky, the special agent with SLED. By the way, SLED, for those who are watching and don't know what that means, that is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. So just so you know what SLED is. A minute-by-minute timeline today presented in court, thanks to General Motors, of Murdaugh's vehicle's whereabouts. From shortly after when authorities say the murders were committed to when he says he got back home, discovering the bodies and making the 911 call. How damaging was this testimony today to Murdaugh's defense?
It was pretty bad. Pretty bad. It corroborated everything that the cell phones had corroborated already with movement. It kind of tied up all the loose ends. It did leave a few questions, though. It left a few questions regarding where the vehicle was at the house, and then him leaving from the house. And I've got some questions about the amount of time between the last interaction on Paul's phone and then the time the vehicle starts up and leaves from the house. That's
Right.
18 minutes.
According to the SLED agent, the information that they have gathered here shows him driving at a slower speed until he passes where Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone was found. When he passes that area, he speeds up, headed toward his parents' home. Again, very damaging, correct? Because how did Maggie Murdaugh's cell phone get about a half a mile away from the crime scene? Well, according to what the state was trying to get the jury to believe today, it's there because perhaps Murdaugh threw it there after he left the crime scene.
I think that's an absolutely reasonable inference. Alex's story had been that he'd woken up from a nap and then driven to his father's house. I don't know anyone that wakes up from a nap at 9 o'clock at night and goes 80 mile an hour down a road to get to their father's house. I'm still a little groggy if I'd just taken an hour nap there. And I think the car slowed down where the cell phone was found and then kind of sped back up.
Right.
So that's not a good a good inference for the defense, but for the prosecution, I think that's, it's going to be tough to overcome.
We'll go back to the testimony of the caregiver from, a week or so ago, where she testified that she thought Murdaugh was at his parents' home for about 20 minutes or so, but he was saying something, oh no, I've been here 30 or 40 minutes. But today, again, with the minute-by-minute detail from the information gathered from his Suburban, he was there right at 20 minutes, 21 minutes. Again, another blow when it comes to the defense.
Absolutely. It does corroborate. I think it was Shelley was her name. It corroborates her, her testimony was a little bit, it wavered a little bit when she testified. But this kind of shores up that, and I believe that the prosecution is going to hammer home all of that in closing. First, we're going to get the defense, though, but prosecution is going to hammer all of that home.
Shows him leaving his parents' house at 9:41 in the evening, getting back to his property exactly at 10 o'clock. Exactly at 10 o'clock, he's on the property. And according to the testimony today, once he discovered the bodies, it was 20 seconds later he makes that 911 call. 20 seconds later, which, again, the prosecution says only 20 seconds. You find your wife shot to death. You find a grisly scene with your son, and within that time frame, within 20 seconds, you're calling 911?
Yeah, I mean, 20 seconds, I'm going to be for the defense here.
Right.
20 seconds is longer than you think, especially if you've driven down there and you saw headlights show, your wife laying on the ground. If you count to 20, getting out of your car, you get out of your car quickly if you saw your wife laying on the ground. That's quick movement. I don't think that's unreasonable. However, the prosecution did hammer home.
Right.
That was really quick. He had it already prepped. So I understand. I'm not too sold on that part of it. I think the other evidence that today was much more damning for the defense here.
What is some of that evidence that you think?
Clearly the vehicle.
Right.
The vehicle corroborates what the cell phones had told us already, but it was able to really allow the jury to visualize that vehicle. They showed the Google Maps and pinpointed. I can imagine being a juror there, sitting there. All right, he's just killed him. He's rushing.
Right.
I still have the question of how did he get back to the house with the vehicle being at the house in 18 minutes.
Right.
So I still have that question that no blood anywhere. I don't understand where the clothes are. I don't understand where the weapons are. And Mr. Harpootlian, he's hammered down on that. He is absolutely, that was his opening, and he's making sure to make that point. And that's the one question that I really have here. But is that enough? Right. Is that reasonable doubt?
Well, you're raising a good point that a lot of people who have been watching online have raised as well. Where is that physical evidence that you usually would see with something like this? Where are the bloody clothes? Where's the blood in the vehicle? Where are the weapons? You believe, and we were talking off air before we went on air, you believe if he had gotten in that vehicle immediately after committing these crimes, there should be some sort of blood in that vehicle, correct?
I think there's got to be some blood somewhere. If he is the shooter at such close range with biological material everywhere,
right,
as it was described, there would be blood on something. There would be biological material on something. If he went and took a shower, it would have been in the house somewhere. We talked about people cleaning the house and going and looking. The housekeeper didn't see anything out of the ordinary. That's just the big question that I have is where is the evidence of the murder actually being committed? I'm not saying that circumstances don't put him there, make him the only reasonable suspect, but that's just a hard question that I think that is going to be talked about in the jury room is, well, where is this other stuff?
Right.
All the circumstances put it to Alec.
All right, so though an admission by defense attorneys in court today, Jim Griffin admitting to the judge today that the state had proven that Alex-Murdaugh was at the dog kennels when he claimed he had not been down there. So is that a stunning admission in court today by the defense?
I don't think so. I think that's a legal argument that they were making for a directed verdict. That they were arguing mere presence at the scene of a crime is not sufficient to make somebody. It's not sufficient to get past a directed verdict. Is ultimately what he was arguing. That was overruled. The judge said any evidence, and you're looking at it in the light most favorable to the non-moving party. Any evidence here?
But the defense, in making this statement, basically has said Murdaugh lied because Murdaugh told investigators he was asleep, he was taking a nap, he wasn't down by the dog kennels. That was his story. He was sticking to it. But the defense today in court said, okay, all right, you got him. He was there. He was at the dog kennels. The jury hears that. What do you think? I would assume the jury heard that, or maybe they didn't.
The jury wasn't present for
Right.
motions for a directed verdict.
Got it.
So that's outside the presence of the jury when you're making a legal argument for the judge to rule on. However, that's going to be the big obstacle that the defense is going to have to get over, and they're going to have an answer to that in their case in chief. They're presenting a case. He's already put up 2 witnesses, so they're not getting last closing. Typically, as a defense attorney, if you don't put up any evidence, you get last closing. So they don't get last closing here. But I'm wondering how they're going to get over that hurdle. Right. But we've already had evidence of Murdaugh lying. We've had evidence of him lying about the roadside shooting. So he's a liar. That's not contested. That's not contested.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a reasonable answer, and maybe we'll see it. But I think it's going to be tough.
Modern technology. I mean, who knew that you could go back and track someone's movement in their vehicle the way they did this today? Step by step, mile by mile, to the parents' house, back to the dog kennels, to his house. It's just incredible. So right now, the defense just started their case late today. Next week, you're a defense attorney. How do you deal with the technology, the modern technology here that provided this information? How do you deal with it?
Well, you're going to have answers to where he was during this timeline. You're going to be able to explain it and have reasonable explanations that are understandable and not far-fetched. Because right now, the prosecution has put on a very strong circumstantial case. I will say that at this point after resting. They put on a strong circumstantial case. And it's going to be a tough road for the defense. They're going to have a credible story. So far I've kind of seen, a bunch of shotgun blasts and pellets going everywhere and no real theory of a defense.
Right. 17 days of testimony by the state. 61 witnesses. I believe more than 500 pieces of evidence admitted in this case so far by the prosecution. We talk about the circumstantial evidence that they have presented. The Snapchat video with the change of clothes, the dog kennel video with witnesses saying it's his voice. Then today, the step-by-step, hour, minute by minute, of where he was that night. So the defense has I guess, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to try to regroup here and tackle this in court next week. And we're being told that the defense is only expected to present maybe 4 or 5 days of testimony here.
That's what I'm being told. That's what I'm seeing here. Again, I think I discussed last night, we're going to see some additional expert witnesses. We're going to see some expert witnesses related to crime scene reconstruction. And I'm hoping, from a defense perspective, that they've got one theory that they're going to go with. not a shotgun approach that we're going to just say, hey, there's reasonable doubt. That's really not a good theory. That hey, our guy might have done it, but you can't prove it. That's not what a jury wants to hear. Right. They want to hear an alternative theory as to why, what is reasonable. Right. What is reasonable, why we should find him not guilty. I know in our newsroom and out and about when I talk to people, opinions have been going all over the place here. One day you hear a group of people say, oh, he did it. Then the next day you hear, oh, wait, no, they didn't do it because they didn't prove this. So it's just like a roller coaster right now. One minute you think the state has proven their case here, and then the next minute you're like, well, wait a minute, if that happened, what about this? For instance, the lack of blood in that vehicle that night. Absolutely. I've gotten messages from family, from friends, asking, well, what about this? What about that? And, I think he did it. I don't think he did it. I think he did it, but they can't prove it. At the end of the day, I think the jury's sitting there doing the same thing in their head because they've not had any discussions yet. Mm-hmm. They've not had any discussions about their thoughts on the case because they're not allowed to. At least that's what they're told by the judge, that there are to be no discussions until the case and all the evidence has been released back to them. You're a defense attorney, a 3-day weekend for this jury. Are you more or less happy about that, or would you want to just go ahead and dive right in the very next day? I would like a break as a defense attorney. It allows me to, go over everything that has been put in from the state. To make sure I've shored up any loose ends that may have been clarified when these witnesses got on the witness stand and testified. Here in South Carolina, we don't get to take depositions in criminal cases, so we don't know what the answers are necessarily before a question is asked on the witness stand. And so you may get some unexpected answers, or you may get an answer that's slightly different than from what you might thought it would have been. Right. And I would take an opportunity to clarify everything if I had additional time. All right, Taylor Bell, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank our viewers as well because we've gotten responses from Israel, the United Kingdom, Australia, Switzerland, New Zealand, and all across the United States. People are watching this trial, wanting to know what is going to happen. Testimony resuming Tuesday morning at 9:30, and you can watch it WLTX Plus, our YouTube channel, or on WLTX.com. We hope you have a good weekend and a happy President's Day, and we'll be back with more coverage Monday night at 9 o'clock.